I'm covering the portion of Chapter 8 in this lecture about outlining. I also want to mention that in the other half of Chapter 8 on organizing types of speeches, I mentioned Chapter 12. I'm getting my chapters mixed up. This is Chapter 8. But be that as it may, here's the portion of the lecture about outlining for Chapter 8, organizing your speech. So that's an actual picture of me in graduate school. It does seem like a long time ago, but there you go. And of course, that's manuscript presentation, isn't it? All right, so outlining your speech. I'm going to move my delightful little face down a bit. There we go. Oops. Go back. There we go. So this is kind of a general discussion about outlining your speech. I will be providing you with templates and examples of outlines that we will work from that go into the nitty-gritty of exactly how you prepare the outline, what you have on the outline. And remember, this outline will be turned in as part of the presentations for the self-introductory speech, the informative, and the persuasive speech. So why do it? Well, first of all, the outline, developing an outline, and I'm pretty well, I'm not going to say I'll assume, but I'll bet that every one of you in this class has had to do a term paper at some time and produce an outline. A speech outline isn't much different than a term paper outline, except that the outline, the end result, is a real scaled back version that you'll use for the speech. And it helps you maintain focus. It's one of the ways to keep you on task while you're giving a speech. I've had so many speeches over the years by students who didn't write out a good, clear outline. And as a result, they just kind of wandered around. It was almost like if something popped into their mind, they wanted to add it to the speech right then and there. No, the outline is going to keep you focused and on task throughout the speech. Some of the other things here, it provides scope, content, logical relationships. I'll discuss all of this as I get further into the lecture here. I've mentioned connecting with the audience over and over again. And you might think, well, how does the outline do that? Well, it helps you do that because, again, it provides that clear, focused presentation that you want to provide for your audience. All right, balance and proportion, visual check. I've told you all that I do writing for Astronomy Magazine, and doing the initial outline is a lot like doing your initial paper. If you've ever written a paper at the last minute, really? Have any of us ever done that? Of course, it happens. And you don't proof it if you don't have time to think about it. You're not really sure if you've achieved balance and again, proportion within the concept of your term paper. Same thing. With the outline, you actually can have a physical, well, I say physical, most of you will probably just do it on the computer, but it will give you a physical visual check on whether or not you outlined in a way that everything that you've done, for example, point 2 supports point 1, point 3 supports point 2, and so on and so on. Again, I have examples of that. Now, I know I've mentioned this before as well. Some of you may have taken a speech class somewhere else, and the instructor had you use note cards. As I've mentioned, if you want to use note cards while you're giving your speech, that's fine. But you will still need to provide me with the outline that you produced for the speech. I gave up using note cards years ago because I got tired of fumbling with them, and I can do exactly the same thing with 3 or 4 sheets of paper with my outline on it. And I've already provided the outline for myself in introductory speech so that you can see how the process I go through to produce something that's easy to use while I'm making a presentation. And so, uh, I know a lot of you probably don't have printers, and the way things are right now, uh, you may not be able to have that easy access to a printer. If at all possible, for when you actually give your speech, try to have a printed version of the outline rather than looking at your phone or an iPad or wherever you might be able to find it. A printed version is truly the best way uh, for presenting your speech. All right, anyway, so some other reasons here. Organize your message, organize your thoughts. Just getting stuff down, and I'll say on paper, really helps you clarify what you're thinking about. All right. It helps you make sure that your main points support one another and make sense. And there's those eyes peering at us off the screen. Not my eyes. I can't even open my eyes that wide anymore. But the point is here is a good outline or note cards. Note cards can do the same thing. But a good outline can help you break away from your notes and look at your audience. I've talked about eye contact before. If you don't look at your audience, then they're going to think you don't care. That's one of the best ways to connect with your audience is to look at them. It's not any different than when someone's talking to you and they do this constantly and never actually look at you. Well, that's frustrating, isn't it? It's irritating. You think, well, what's wrong? Why won't they look at me? Are they not telling the truth? Is there, what's the problem here? So eye contact is incredibly important, and a good, well-constructed, easy to use outline will help provide you with that all important and necessary eye contact. Even though you're going to be recording your speeches, I expect you to look at the camera as if it was the audience. Don't just have your eyes glued to a piece of paper or a handful of note cards. So, what does it actually do? All right, developing the main points in an outline provides clarity, relevance, and balance. And I say here, remember ethos, logos, and pathos? Remember, there's all three of these elements are present in any speech, no matter what kind of speech it might be. And by producing a good outline, you can see, well, in an informative speech, since I'm providing information, gosh, look at this outline. I need good logical structure in this outline. I need good credibility. Where did I put my credibility statements in here? Oh, there it is in the outline. My emotional content, the pathos. So clarity, relevance, and balance. Now, for clarity, clarity comes initially in the thesis statement. Remember, in the other lecture, I talk about the specific purpose. What do you want your audience to know by the end of your presentation? All right. And again, you don't read that to them. That's just something that you're going to write out. Now, I mentioned in the other lecture that on the outline, you're going to put the type of speech. Remember, there's 4 types, and you're going to tell me which pattern you're using. There's 5 types. I'm not going to include Monroe's motivated sequence at this point, but you're going to tell me that. The other thing you're going to put at the top of your outline is you're going to write out no more than 2 sentences, preferably 1, a specific purpose, so that I know what you decided that you want your audience to know by the end of the speech. All right. Then in the body of the speech, in the introduction of the speech, you need your thesis statement. The thesis statement provides the clarity your audience needs to know exactly what you're going to be talking about. As I say here, it becomes a guide or a roadmap for the rest of the speech. Because if you say, today I'm going to tell you about, and then as you outline, you realize you're adding extraneous material, then indeed you're not accomplishing the task of clarity. All right, so clarity. And you find that clarity in the thesis statement. All right, relevance. Once you get the outline produced, then you're going to have a chance to go through, and I say edit. I'll just go ahead and tell you. The informative speech that I will be presenting is on gold. I like gold. Who doesn't like gold? All right, so I'm going to give an informative speech about gold. And when I first outlined the gold speech, my thesis statement is that I want to tell everyone how gold is formed in the cataclysmic destruction of stars. Okay, so what am I talking about? What clarity am I trying to reach here? I clearly want my audience to understand that I'm talking about how gold comes to be, how it's formed. But then when I did my initial draft of an outline, I found myself like down in main point 2 talking about 24 karat gold, 14 karat gold, all these different things that gold is used for. And I realized that has nothing to do with the way gold is formed. It was the outline that alerted to me that even though that might have been interesting stuff, it wasn't relevant to my thesis statement. See how this all builds on each thing? So putting that outline together helps you realize if everything you're putting in support, if each topic or point supports the next point, if they're relevant. And that's the structure, the logos again. All right, balance and proportion. An analogy. Okay, a good outline is like a ladder. And I found a kitty up on a ladder there. If you go out and you got to get up on the roof of your house and you're looking at this wonky ladder where some of the rails are real close together and some of them are way far apart, you don't want to try to climb that ladder, do you? Okay, same thing with your outline. If you put this outline together and you see that you've got all kinds of information stuck in main point 2 and only a tiny little bit in main point 1 and who knows what you did in main point 3, you've got, again, that visual check. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to actually be able to look at this piece of paper, and I'll stick with paper, and say, oh yeah, I need to spread this out or get rid of some of the stuff that isn't relevant, so that my outline is like the rungs on a good ladder. It's evenly spaced. That's the balance that you're trying to achieve. All right, now there's 3 different kinds of outlines, and these are outlined in chapter 8. Working, complete sentence, and the presentation. All right, so the working outline, this stuff is pretty much exactly what you think it is. You're just, sitting down, whether you do it on a computer. I can't recommend enough that when you're just brainstorming, when you're just thinking about this stuff, sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and just sketch it out. Oh gosh, I do that all the time, and I scratch things out and I reject stuff, and I find, at least for the working outline, that actually physically writing it out helps me through the thought process more than I can on the computer. But the working outline is exactly what you think it is. It's your draft. That's where you're getting started and putting your ideas down, seeing if your ideas are clear, if they're balanced, and if they're relevant. All right. Now, a complete sentence outline. This is where you would write a speech out word for word. Honestly, I hope none of you do that, at least for my class. I don't see any value in it at all, because it's a lot of work. And the moment you start doing that, if you write it out word for word, you say, "Oh, Ray, I can't figure it out if I don't write it out word for word." You're going to lose the spontaneity and the excitement of the speech, and you're going to have a very hard time um, paring down a fully written out word for word speech back into a usable outline form. If you really need to do it, then go ahead. But ultimately, it needs to end up back in a good outline format. And some of you may be thinking, well, what does that format look like? That's another lecture. It's not too far off. This is, like I said, this is just the general introduction about outlining. So the presentation outline is what you use to give the speech. You want as little text on that outline as you can manage. If you write out whole paragraphs, you're going to lose eye contact, spontaneity, and so on, because you're going to stand there with your head down reading it. You don't want to do that. So the working outline, maybe a complete sentence outline. Sometimes, sometimes I will write out entire thoughts, but I gave up long ago trying to write the speech out word for word because that didn't actually help me that much. All right, so the working draft, I've kind of gotten ahead of myself. The working guideline or guides the speaker during the initial stages. Okay, I've said all this already. It's a draft. It's just to get you started. It gives you an idea of where you're going to go and whether or not all the parts are beginning to fit together. Honestly, if you sit down and try to write your speech out without going through the working draft first, you're going to get really bogged down. It doesn't take that long. It's not that much effort. And whether you do it on a computer or a piece of paper, it's really helpful. All right, the complete sentence, I've already said this. I took this right out of the book. A highly detailed description of your ideas and how they relate to one another provides greater depth than blah, blah, blah. Uh, but if you do this, you do not use this in your speech. Why? Because your speech needs to be extemporaneous. All right. You're not reading it. All right. So this, let's see. If you need to write out the full sentence outline, and again, I've said this over and over again, you have to put it back into a shortened outline version that you would use for your speech. Do not email me a complete sentence outline. I don't want to see it. I want to see the outline that you would use for the speech itself. So, the presentation outline. All right, again, engages your audience personality. I can't say any more about this. You need, excuse me, reaching for a little bit of liquid here. All right, so if you're going to engage your audience, if you're going to connect with your audience, you can't do that looking down at a fully written out speech. I've said enough about that. All right, it's all about extemporaneous speaking. Remember, Mark Twain once said, "It usually takes me 3 weeks to get ready for a good impromptu speech." And of course, he said impromptu, but he meant now we would use the term extemporaneous. How do you do that? First, you prepare, you work up your outline. Secondly, you practice. You must, and you do it out loud, you must use that outline and practice your speech a number of times until you're comfortable with it. Also, by practicing the speech out loud, you're very quickly going to find, oh, that doesn't work. Oh, I like that. I'm going to move this around a little bit. It's an editing process in and of itself. If you stand up in front of a camera with your outline and it's your first try, it's not going to be good. It's not going to work real well. So remember, it's all about preparation and practice. That's what makes for good extemporaneous speaking. Ah, oh, that must be my last slide. All right. I get excited here. I keep clicking away. So that's the reason for outlining. These are some examples. And what's important here is to remember that there's the working, the complete sentence, the presentation outline, and most importantly is that presentation outline that will allow you to give a good, exciting, spontaneous, and extemporaneous presentation. I will show you examples of completed outlines. I will also give you an outline template that you can use and make your own. So we will be doing that before we move on to some of the more complex speeches. Hope this was helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.